Alright, this is my raw edit of the week 76 for Chronos. I just imported this file into Lightroom 4. I haven't hardly even looked at it yet. Just gonna take some, I've got some ideas for it. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna basically go through it and basically do what I do to all my photos and try to get uh, a good JPEG out of it and then basically take it from there. One of the first things I always do is touch my clarity. But since this is a portrait, you kind of want to keep clarity a bit down. I usually crank the clarity, but there's circumstances where I feel it's probably not the best to crank it. If you crank it in this case, uh, she doesn't really look entirely realistic, looks a bit greasy. And I might use that in a later edit, but for this one I just kind of want to get a basic portrait. I noticed that the lighting effects on this bump here are a bit distracting. So we're just going to take the spot remover tool real quick and just try to go ahead and illuminate that, and problem solved. Let's bump the contrast a little bit. I almost want to make that background entirely dark, but our highlights are getting a bit too harsh. Yeah, if I bring those down, it's a bit bizarre. Let's see. It's difficult to crop anything from this because it's just kind of all over the place. Even if I feel like if I cropped from here down, I feel like I'd clearly be cropping too much. So we kind of have to keep it like that. It's a bit of a bizarre composition, but whatever. Let's see. I think I'm actually take my blacks down. Something I used to do when I was using raw therapy still. Just a little bit. I really like increasing my shadows. It gives me a lot more detail. A lot of things you couldn't see before. And it also gives you some latitude on the blacks. Whites are fine where they're at in my opinion. However, wouldn't mind changing the balance just a little bit. It's a bit warm. Yeah, that's too cold. I'm gonna back up just a little bit. I'm not even sure if I'm back at default or not, but that's not too bad right there. Let's see. These greens on the leaves are a bit vibrant, in my opinion, and then I feel like they're supposed to be, but I think I just want to bring those down just a bit in the saturation HSL. I've really fantastic tool using those. Bring the yellows down a little bit with it. Maybe make them darker as well. I feel like it gives it a bit more natural tone than what we were looking at before. Let's see. This little patch of aqua in the leaf, I'm actually going to go ahead and mix it. So I'm just basically going to take my aquas and just completely eliminate them. Now you can tell it's still a little bit aqua, but it's not as distracting as it was before. Maybe get rid of some blues. What I'm looking at here is when I get rid of the blues, what it's due to the eyes, it just kind of sterilizes them, I guess is the best way to describe it. Just some general sharpening. Let's go ahead and mask it off as well. I like to mask a lot, because I really just like to sharpen the edges, and that's about it. Don't need to touch the noise reduction hardly at all. We're dealing with ISO 100. Guilty pleasure is post-crop vignetting, because when it's like this, I feel like it's okay. When people are getting to where it's like that, I feel like it's actually too much. However, in this case, it almost works, because these leaves, which still don't really have any context in the image by itself, and that we don't have any solid context, we don't know why they're there. If we vignette as much as we did there, what we're doing is we're actually kind of giving them context, making it seem like she's just poking out from behind the bushes. And she's just some crazy forest lady. I should go ahead and snapshot that. Bring the vignetting back to just about -12, -10, something like that. Maybe -15. That way it's still, everything's still there, nothing's gone, but it helps you to just kind of draw your eyes more towards the center of the image. I hate adding grain to images. It seems like the stupidest thing anybody's ever done to an image. Uh, I don't mind. I just really would prefer never to use it ever. I'm going to snapshot it again now that I've taken the vignetting back to where I like it. I like this as it is. Uh, it's it's interesting. It's a bit better than it was originally if you compare it. This is kind of just like a flat portrait. I've made it a lot more dynamic. You can see where the vignetting actually really helps because the trees, or the leaves rather, don't seem particularly vignetted, but they're darker around the edges. They draw you in more towards the face. Uh, this is a lot more dynamic. I just overall like where it's gone so far. Now let's go ahead and take, I always like to do black and white edits. One thing I don't like about this right off the bat is uh, how gray it seems. I like the blacks in the background, that's nice. I like some more whites, so I'm actually going to crank the contrast some more. I just take it all the way to the edge. That's gotten rid of some of those grays. Now one thing that's interesting that you could, if you ever shot black and white film, this is something you might be familiar with filters. With the HSL section, when we go to black and white, and we go to the black and white mix, you can get some bizarre, surreal effects, like basically taking our greens and just knocking them all the way down. That will basically go ahead and eliminate them and turn them completely black, or we can crank them as if we were using like an infrared filter almost. And that's interesting, but the problem is when you get down like this, they have their own outline. Unfortunately, it kind of gives it away. Red filters back in the day were not very good for using on portraits because skin is primarily orange, which is not too far off from red. And if you were basically just darken it up, maybe it was blue, maybe it was green filter. I can't remember. There was a certain filter you just didn't want to use with skin. I thought it was either red or blue. Let's go ahead and take the greens down though. I like them darker. It gives a mysterious light to the subject. It kind of makes you wonder why the subject is particularly illuminated. Although her headdress is primarily brown, I'm going to stay away from touching the orange because it's going to start affecting our skin tones as well. However, you don't know until you try. That actually makes her look extraordinarily pale, and I actually kind of like it. Bring the oranges back down. What the yellow did is actually gave some highlights to these plants, which I don't mind. I'm going to snapshot that now. Bring these guys back down. For this one, I'm actually going to go ahead and see what happens when I crank the clarity again. Let's see. I'm going to leave the vignetting where it's at. I think it's fine there. This is a far more naturalistic portrait than the other black and white one I've done so far. I'm just going to tweak it from here. Maybe bring my highlights up, bring them back down. It's a bit too bright. Bring it back down. I think it's fine where it's at. Snapshot that one again. Now this last one I'm going to do is I'm going to do it for the sake of a Photoshop edit that I want to take from here after I'm done with Lightroom. So basically just going to go ahead and go back to color. And I actually just kind of want to make her pale, first of all. So the way we're going to do that is we're actually just going to take our vibrance down. We still have the saturation of the greens, and I can actually go back separately and bump those to compensate for what we're losing. Take the oranges and actually desaturate them a little bit. I kind of want it to just look almost cold, and you'll see why once I start getting into what I'm going to do. That's not bad. I might actually completely de-clarify everything. That makes everything look extremely soft, and it might work well for what I plan to do. While I have the chance, I'm actually going to take this lipstick and I almost want to make it red. But I think I'm just going to actually leave it where it's at for the sake of not fixing something that's not broken. I'm going to snapshot that. Alright, so let's go through them real quick. This is the first one we did. I basically vignetted the bushes and I made it gave the bushes a little bit of context and made it seem like she's just poking out of the bushes. More of a realistic portrait, less vignetting. The first black and white one made her seem awkwardly pale and almost glowing. Another realistic portrait but in black and white, and this one we're going to edit in Paint.net once I export them all. So we're going to export this one now. Open Paint.net. Paint.net is a freeware editor that I use because I'm too cheap to buy Photoshop. Let's see. Where's my raws at? There they are. Okay, first thing I always do when I get in Paint.net, I always duplicate the layer just so I don't have to go and import another one later in case I need to start all over. I just leave that one alone, I actually turn it off and just let it be. What I plan on doing for this one is I actually plan on trying to somehow simulate like a Poison Ivy effect from Batman franchise. The way I'm going to try to do this is I'm going to try to basically go in and find like a cheap freeware, like a free stock image of a masquerade mask. So we're basically going to go look up free stock photo, and you can tell I've already looked it up. The reason I'm using a stock one is because when it comes to things like this, I'm extraordinarily wary about using copyrighted images, and I really should have just made my own. If nothing else, I can just take inspiration from this, because what I actually plan to do is posterize it, or cartoonize it, make it look like a cartoon, because since Batman is a comic book, I think it'd be appropriate. The problem is, I'm terrible with getting stock images, and it's because it's things like this. That's not going to work. We got to think of the perspective as well. This would be cool. I almost guarantee I'm not going to be able to use it. Yeah. Let's see. Let's look at mask. Yeah. If we look at mask, something like that would actually be fantastic, but I guarantee we're not going to be able to use it. Oh god, I hate these things. Let's see. It says it's free, but and of course, whatever site it's alluding to is not existent, apparently. I think what we're gonna do. Yeah, I mean, if you go to this site, it's just going to give you into there. Oops, doesn't exist. Oh, wait. Apparently it's something different now. Let's see if it's here. Masquerade. of course, there's 9,000 different masquerade masks here, and there's a regular hat, but that's not exactly what we're going for. I look up mask, but see, this would be fantastic if I just. You see, they use a credit system, and I'm just not in the mood for dealing with that. So actually, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to commit the cardinal sin of photography. I'm just going to try to go ahead and either. I'm going to click this, see where it goes. Okay, it's not going to help me at all. I'm basically just going to. Let's see. This site actually might have something good going on. Free stock photos. Yada yada. Yeah. I'm basically just going to save image as, which is a terrible thing to do, so don't do it ever. Image, layers, import from file. What this is going to do is going to add a layer with this whole image in it. If we look back at my download, it was 8307. That's typically how I find things. 8307. There it is there. And of course, because we're looking at a legit JPEG or legit RAW file, it's tiny by comparison. And that might reflect later. What I'm going to do immediately is I'm just going to use the magic wand tool and get rid of all this white space. It usually works pretty good, pretty well for all the English teachers out there. I don't need it to be too precise this instant. I just need to get rid of some of the basic white areas. These leaf things are going to work well with this in the end, I think. If nothing else, it's just going to fail horribly. Right now we're just waiting for it to delete all the little white spaces. I'm not going to bother with these little spines on the leaves. Just going to go ahead and delete most of them. I can go ahead and nitpick later. Let's see, image mesh, go select. I think I might have actually cut a piece of it off. Nope, I don't know why. This leaf isn't complete, and I'm not sure why, but it doesn't matter too much to me right now. The goal here is to actually get it scaled to fit her face, and we're getting there. I think I need to make it actually just a little bit bigger. We're going to distort it a little bit because it would be distorted in real life, and we need to reflect the features she would have in real life, like her nose. And even now, it's still not entirely lined up. The line between this eye of the mask and this eye of the mask needs to be parallel with the line of her two pupils. Everything else can be distorted later. Let's take a look at how that looks. It looks ridiculous right now. It will come to fruition, I think, in a little bit. Just going to leave that like it is. You can see the watermark from that site. It's not too big of a deal right now, except for the fact that it's just evidence that I'm a terrible person. What I'm going to do is actually to play around with the effects I have, usually artistic, like they're usually ink sketch. It's going to take a little bit because it's a big image. Already we're starting to get more of a cartoony look to it. I want to keep the color maxed because I feel like this image has color that needs to be reserved. I'm actually going to take the ink outline down because it's using basically stippling, I think is what it's called, to fill in these shadow areas, and that's kind of realistic for comic books, but I just don't like it right now, so I'm going to knock it down to 25. And it's up here with these details, we're not going to be able to do much about it. It's still doing that, so I'm actually going to take it all the way down just to see what happens. Yeah, you can tell some of it's just not, it's going to be unavoidable, so I'm just going to have to bite the bullet on that one, because when I completely eliminated it, you've got the background is just, it's terrible. I'm going to bring it back up to 25 for now. Leave that. Just take a look at some of the other ones I've got. Actually, here's what we're going to completely undo that. I lied. We're going to oil paint it first, and then we're going to sketch it, ink sketch it, whatever it was. Right now it's basically buffering the whole image. Like I said, it's a massive image. I don't even know how many pixels it is. It's telling me it's a 20 by 30 print. The coarseness right now and the brush size don't even have an effect on it, actually, so I think I'm just going to crank the brush size, see what happens. Yeah, it's not really rendering a noticeable difference. It's only really you seeing a difference in like the feathers. That's about it. In that case, we're just going to repeat the ink sketch for now, because that's something we're going to have to deal with. Unfortunately, the distortion tools on Paint Net are not the best. I'll be the first to admit that. I mostly use a series of bulges. I find that works decently. Basically, the first bulge we're going to deal with is the one that was going to be in her nose of the mask, and that's pretty well placed. I'm just going to, if I take the bulge all the way down, it actually just does that. So you have to actually find the middle ground. It's a bit of a numbers game, really. Yeah, it still doesn't really do it for me. Unfortunately, the preview they give you is minuscule. And the numbers on, as far as I'm concerned, the numbers on the where the center is don't really correspond to anything at all. Let's see. Alright, go ahead and cancel that. What we might have to do is just manually stretch it. And by that, what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and zoom in. And basically just go into the... You probably use the lasso select for this, actually. Just kind of like, I'm going to just basically select around her nose where it would be. Make sure I include all of the mask. And then basically form it as I see it fit. It looks bad now. We're going to give it a little bit of a blur to kind of fix that. If we zoom out though, it's starting to look a bit more like an actual mask. Now I've got a little bit of a bend in the nose. That's exactly what we were looking for. Now the next priority is basically our left, her right side of the face is just kind of like flaring off. What we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and lasso select, just kind of roughly around her face. Go all the way to the edge, and then just kind of like right there. I want to avoid touching this edge. Go back to moving it. And basically what we're going to do is we're just going to scrunch it in. I'm going to rotate and distort it a little bit to allow it to really fit. And that doesn't work too bad. I mean, at yay size, it's kind of, yeah. I might try to go ahead and try the bulge again. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do an inverted bulge. I'm going to do like a dent, actually. I'm going to bring it to the right side of her face to try to pull it back. Too much, though. What it's doing is it's starting to pull it off center. It's not how I like it. It's not the best. I'm basically just going to go and do the same ink sketch thing I did for the rest of the image. So it's basically the same. Or the problem we're facing here is that yeah, that's not the best. So what we're going to do is basically just going to go ahead and we're going to merge it down and then do another ink sketch. Basically take a look at how it's going to look. It's not going to affect the original image too much. I'm actually going to turn the coloring a bit down. The problem I have is this is far more vibrant than anything else. So we're going to undo it. We're going to undo the merge. We're going to affect the mask a little bit more. We're going to affect the contrast, since the rest of the image is, I'd say the rest of the image is pretty contrasty. So we're going to actually bump the contrast. It's really dark in some areas, which is the point of contrast. However, I kind of like it. I am going to bump the brightness a whole bunch though. I just kind of want to see him almost desaturated, even though I'm about to go in the HSL and just desaturate it some more. The hue, I'm going to make it not yellow, I'm going to make it actually a bit more red if I can find it. I like it actually a bit there. The lightness, it's tough. I don't want to bring it, I don't want to bring it back above 0. I might make it a bit darker. Immediately it almost seems like it fits better with everything going on behind it. So we're going to merge it and then repeat the ink sketch again to see how it looks. See, now I'd actually say it looks a lot, almost like it looks more like it would have actually been there. It seems to blend in more with what's going on. Um, it is tough to say though. I think I'm going to leave that one there. Save it as. It saves as a paint.net file first, and then it's going to ask me to save it as a JPEG. However, I don't think I'm done with it yet. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and try to basically do kind of like some eyeshadow almost. And in place of the masquerade mask, which, let's see, edited one. Gotta flatten it, of course. And of course it decides to just stop responding. Alright, undo the flattening. Now what I'm going to do is, since I've got it undid the flattening, I'm just going to delete this altogether. That leaves me with the original background I imported. And what it's going to do, I'm going to bring it back, duplicate it again, I'm going to start working from there. Start a new layer. I'm going to find almost like a good red, a red or an orange, I'd say. And I'm going to take the alpha, which is the transparency, down to like 8. I'm going to zoom in. Let's see. Basically, just zoom in and just work on her eyes for now. Let's see, where's my brush? There it is. Crank brush size because this file, once again, that's too big. Basically, since I've got the alpha on, anything besides 255, it's basically just gonna give it like a transparent effect, and I'm just going to go around the eyes. I don't care if I touch the eyes or not because I'm going to mess with that later. I'm going to go all the way up to the brows and maybe just a little bit higher, and just kind of go over the eye. Same on this eye. What I'm going to do after that is I'm actually going to go ahead and blur it and then mask off for the eyes so it's not ridiculous. I might actually change the hue of the eyes to fit the theme. Let's see, there we go. Now this by itself looks ridiculous. I'm going to go and blur it, Gaussian blur. Let it render it. Go all the way up to like a radius of 42. '70s, I like where 70's at. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and go there. Let it render. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to look at my transparency options with the layers, because I did make this on a different layer. So basically it's completely separated from everything else we're working with here. Before I go start erasing things, I think what I want is I want it to be an additive, or maybe it's a multiply. Actually, that looks really good at multiply. Remember that. Color burn, glow. Overlay. Actually, I'm going to leave it at overlay. I'm going to leave it at max transparency for now. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead with my eraser tool. And before I go to erase, I'm actually going to take the alpha all the way back up. The reason is because it would take me forever to go through and actually erase it with an alpha of 4. Because I have to continue to go over it over and over and over again. For this, what I might actually do is I might actually just go into the original file, use my magic wand, go ahead and select the eye. It's taking a little bit because it's had a lot of pixels to process, so to speak. I might have had the tolerance too high, so let's let it wait for a second because it's just let it do what it's got to do. What we're going to do, this is a technique that I use for masking things in these circumstances. What it's going to do is it's going to ideally select just the pupil of the eyeball, and since that's selected, we're going to go back to the layer 3, which has the eyeshadow on it, and just hit the delete key. What that's going to do, even though it, I can't tell if it's responding now or what. It's still not responding. What that's going to do is basically it's going to just erase everything on layer 3 that we had gotten done, all the eyeshadowing, for just that pupil area, and that works way easier than just trying to erase it. However, because we're working with such a big negative right now, it's basically just taking forever, and I don't want to close it because I don't want to lose my work. I'm going to pull up my task manager and take a look at what's going on, make sure it's... It says it's not responding, but I've got some amount of response. I just need to... Yeah, you can see I've got a decent amount of response. I just... Oh, wait, there's my color. See, it took forever. That being said, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the erase tool. It did highlight our pupil, and that's going to help us. Go to my second layer. I'm just going to be careful with it and just erase around the pupil area. Because while it did select the not the pupil, not the white part of the eyeball that I can never remember the name of, it selected that just like it wanted to. It also selected a lot of stuff, which means we're not entirely masked off like I would need it. So I'm just going to be careful with it and go around and... What I'm going to do is now, because it's just being stubborn, we're just going to select all. It takes a lot less RAM, it takes a lot less processor power for the computer. The only time I really like to actually add the alpha is when I need to feather a little bit, because there isn't really a lot of feathering in Paint.net, unfortunately. One feature I would really like to see just softens the edges a little bit. I just kind of go around so it's not as harsh of an erase. Same thing here. I'm not going to bother with the masking. Usually it'll work pretty well when you're at lower resolutions. But this file was just a bit stubborn and massive. Let's see. You want to go all the way down to the pink part of the eye, because that would not be affected by eyeshadow. Once again, bring the alpha down to like 8 or 12. Crank the brush size to make it a bit easier. Kind of soften up the edges a little bit. Zoom out, and that's what we've got now. And that's kind of what I wanted. That orange almost looks like it's like safety orange, you know? So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the HSL. Bring the saturation down just a bit. Bring the lightness down just a bit. And that's better right there. I actually like that a lot. Go ahead and back it out. And look at that. I think that's way better of an image. Go ahead and... I think that's the last one I'm going to do. I'm going to close that. And then I'm going to merge the layers, just to make sure everything goes right. And once it's merged, I'm going to save it as a JPEG. And that should be all there is to it. File, save as, edited to, save. Alright, and those were my raw edits of the week. You've got this, I showed you the one just a second ago, and then these 4. And I think those are pretty good. I hope you guys take a look at them. Hope you guys take some knowledge away from what I've shown you. Hopefully you guys can probably actually do it better than I did. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.